welcome to another Pastor's Chat. Great to be with you.
Yeah. It is always good.
Good to be back into it.
Back doing this on a regular basis.
On your screens, on your YouTube. Share it with your friends. And
absolutely.
We can just keep going. And we're revisiting some stuff now.
Yes, was it our first one or maybe our second one we ever did?
Our first or second one we ever did was looking at some books.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot of books through the lockdowns we've had since then.
Yeah, I've read some fantastic books.
We've probably had 4 lockdowns since then. So a lot of time to read.
Many.
Yeah. And listen.
So I've got a little pile here of some books that I've been reading.
Yeah,
you've got a pile.
Yeah, I read ebooks, I read audio books. I don't read the audio book, I listen to it, and I read books. Yeah. So I just wrote them all down on a list because there was one of each actually. Yeah.
Well, I'm old school, I still read an actual book. But you're enjoying the audio books, don't you?
Yeah, they're great. On the bike, I ride a lot nowadays. And put them in when I ride. I think that's legal. And I'll listen to books when I'm riding or when I'm at the gym.
So you get close to the end of a chapter, you just do an extra couple of laps around the block.
Makes me do a little bit extra if I need to. The only problem is I do love highlighting, and I just so I have to actually pause it, write it in my notes what I thought I heard, and double check it just to think I think I got that quite right.
So if someone's going down Deacon Avenue and see you on the side of the road,
means I've had an epiphany. My next sermon quote or something like that.
Very good.
That's right. So
we're going to share 3 books.
Perfect.
Anyone can see I've got 4, but I'll explain that in a moment. But 3 books each of things that we've been reading over the last couple of months.
Sounds
something
great.
That stood out to us, something that hopefully you might be able to get hold of.
I hope so.
Encourage you and equip you in different ways.
That's it.
Will I begin?
Go for it.
All right. Well, this is the book that I'm actually reading right now. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. And it's Another Man's War. And it's by Sam Childers, better known as the Machine Gun Preacher.
That's a great movie.
Really good movie.
Haven't read the book. But...
Although now that I'm reading the book, like typical Hollywood, they'll touch on a Christian story, but kind of take off the emphasis on Christ. This book is just full on, really, really strong in his faith. Talk about miracles, answers to prayer, God's leading in his life. And it's pretty well his testimony of how he came to Christ, how he caught that vision for the African nation and particularly children that have been kidnapped and turned into child soldiers, and how he's going out there to help protect and defend these children, setting up an orphanage. But the stories in there, I just can't put it down. The stories are just so miraculous of God doing incredible, doing the impossible through him and through the people that he has on side. So
it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you've ever watched the movie...
It's a good movie. It's Jared Butler.
Well, Jared Butler's the stars in the film, Machine Gun Preacher.
Yep.
But a really good companion piece if you like that. If you've got a heart for mission, got a heart for children, the poor, whatever it might be, or even just want a really, really good, pretty much in-your-face kind of story. He goes into his testimony. I didn't realise until I'd read the book that he was a drug addict, drug dealing psycho before he came to know Christ. So. It's a pretty wild story within there as well. So that's a really good one. Another Man's War by Sam Childers. First book I'd recommend.
Fantastic.
What do you got?
Well, my first one is one I've been reading a lot of. We're doing a series on discipleship next year. So I've been just starting to read books I have read before and read new ones. And I'm reading The Cost of Discipleship by DIETRICH Bonhoeffer. So it's an old one.
Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, it's an old one.
That's getting
heavy. I just kept looking at the best discipleship books, so I've got good content, and this one just kept popping up on every website, so I better read it. And it turns out I actually had it on my bookshelf because someone donated a heap of books to church, and I grabbed that one just because it had DIETRICH and said, it's good to have on the bookshelf just to
looks impressive when other pastors come to visit.
So I thought I'd put that there, and then I saw it on my shelf, so I thought, probably should read it if it's any good. And I've been loving it. It is very good. You do have to read it slowly. Sometimes I read 2 pages and stop for a bit, but I try to make my way slow.
Originally written in German, was it?
It might have been. It wouldn't be. I reckon it probably would have been actually.
Translated.
It's really good, and it just goes quite deep into what discipleship is, how Jesus did discipleship, and it looks at all the different stories of Jesus when he made a very high call to living for a lot of people, like the rich young ruler. He spends a big long chapter and pulls that apart in a fantastic way, actually, and very challenging book as well. You kind of feel like you really do realise why it's called The Cost of Discipleship, and how much it costs you in your life. I'd highly recommend it if you're into some of those slightly deeper topic ones. Like I've read some of the other discipleship books I've read are quite light in a good way, and a great intro, but it's just a fantastic one and it's good just to go back to see why some of these guys are famous writers, because I've read his autobiography, but I've never read his actual
And that's a fascinating story.
It's a really good story. Yeah, I don't have that one on the list, but that may be for another time.
Who really paid the price of discipleship.
I got that one at the lane sale, I reckon. It was in perfect nick, the Bonhoeffer one. So,
well, there's that thing with lane sale, and even at the moment the library are sort of giving away books.
Yeah, there's a lot of books at church on Sundays. If you come, you'll see a table out for a gold coin, and there's some rippers in there.
It's not rubbish.
No, we probably took the best ones out of there already, maybe. But
probably.
Yeah. Because it's been out for one Sunday, but keep an eye out because there's still some good ones there. Keep looking, and there are some good ones.
Yeah, terrific. The next book I've got here is called How Not to Read the Bible. I just went to Koorong at the start of the year, and I was rummaging through the apologetics section, and I came across this book, and I just loved the title. How Not to Read the Bible. What does that mean? Had a little bit of a look through it, and as it says on the front here, How Not to Read the Bible, making sense of the anti-women, anti-science, pro-violence, pro-slavery, and other crazy-sounding parts of Scripture. And as I touch on the Bible, as we'd all probably find, particularly as we read the Old Testament, there are some things that leave you just scratching your head thinking, what in the world is all that about? Why would God do that? Why would the Jews do that? How come David was allowed to have hundreds of wives and all this kind of crazy stuff? What does it mean? And so this author, Dan Kimball, through the book, touches on a lot of those controversial things within the Bible, things that often the critics really hammer Christianity or hammer the Bible about, and bring out an explanation of why the Bible says certain things, why the Bible might seemingly be anti-women, why the Bible might seemingly be pro-slavery, why the Bible is so violent in places. Like, no question, the Old Testament's pretty bloodthirsty in places. I've heard people sort of say that that when you get into the New Testament, it's like there's a completely different God. All of a sudden, Jesus is love and peace and forgiveness and all that, but Old Testament God is like angry judgment and hellfire and brimstone.
A lot of people don't know how to approach that, do they?
And that's what this book really.
I've met mature Christians that still struggle with big chunks of the Bible, and I thought they might have found out by then that point, but it surprises me how many still.
Well, it kind of gives us a choice,
books.
Doesn't it? Like to ignore it, don't read those bits of the Bible, or take the time to study it, learn it, and see how it does make sense and it sits cohesively with the teachings of Christ.
That's why it's pretty important to see secondary sources, not just the primary source of the Bible. But
if
you go to secondary sources, sometimes it'll shed light on the primary source of the Bible itself, won't it?
That book's also available as one of those audio books, because I know both my sons, Josh and Ethan, have been listening to that book and have both loved listening to it as an audio book. So whether people are wanting to get a hard copy, or
if you go on Audible, you get your first book free. So
very, very interesting. And did you know, this is what I learned from this, did you know that there are unicorns in the Bible?
Unicorns?
Unicorns.
Is that all one in Christ, or is it a unity joke? There's a joke coming here, isn't there?
No, not a joke.
Oh, okay. It's one of
the four. It's in the King James.
Okay.
But we'll leave that there for people to perhaps come and ask
not one of the horsemen on the Revelations?
No, actual unicorns mentioned in the Bible.
There you go.
What's your next one, Josh?
My next one, so this was an ebook, this one, and this is called Winning the War on Your Mind by Craig Groeschel. Fantastic.
Groeschel stuff's always fantastic.
And he brings maybe one out every 2 years. He's pretty good at bringing consistent ones, and he often links them in with some sermon series he did. And I actually listened to, he did a how to lead with your best mind or something, just as a little series on his leadership podcast. And then he said, if you really like this, you got to read the book. I said, and fantastic. Like, you just don't realize how much is actually going on in your mind. And we know that Paul in the Bible says stuff like take your thoughts captive, and by renewing of your mind is how we. There's another one of his big phrases, and there's actually quite a lot in the Bible. I realised reading his that you read over sometimes about our mind and how we need to control our mind. And he just says really brings it down to earth, makes it quite practical, and it's just fascinating. And I think it'd be a real game changer for a lot of people that struggle with things like anxiety and all that sort of stuff. It wouldn't cure them of it or anything like that, but just helps give you practical tools for helping win that war in your mind.
It's particularly true right now, as how many people have struggled through the various lockdowns.
And it's a very timely release.
Just the worry about, are we going to go into another lockdown one day? What's happening with the border closures? There's so much stress and pressure on people. Their mental health is at an all-time high. It sounds like
he's a preacher that I've always, great big leader, very larger than life sort of thing. And the stories he shares in this, you realise he's had times where his mind's been quite fragile and been quite many times of weakness as a strong leader, and he's been able to.
I think I love his transparency like that. He doesn't just set himself up as Superman preacher
Yeah.
or great mega
Yep.
church leader, but he's just like us.
It's very easy to relate to
Regular.
him, particularly through this one. So I highly recommend that one.
Now, you mentioned you got that on an ebook.
Yeah, I got the
How
ebook,
do
that
you
one.
read ebooks? How do you do it?
iPad, pretty good.
Yep,
yeah,
on the
so I always
iPad.
use the iPad. iPad mini is my favourite size for it. So yeah, and then you can highlight it, you can save it, you can it just picks up, and you can make the text bigger. So someone like yourself might like that.
I might need it.
Yeah, but
That 3 lines per page.
And I like the ebooks come with like extra little study guides and stuff sometimes, or little extra resources. Not always. That's why I bought that one though, because it had the free
They can
study
often
guide
be
with it.
far cheaper than a hard copy, can't they?
And particularly that book, that was one that if I wanted to get that book and wait for it, it looked like it was going to be 2 to 3 months.
Yep.
And I knew after hearing you recommended on the podcast, I'm like, well, if that comes in 3 months, or I'm not going to go home, order it, all that. So I needed to read it while I was fresh. So ebooks are good for just getting straight away.
Sounds good. Well, I've got 2 more books here. We're going to do
the title
3,
here. Yeah.
but I sort of couldn't separate these. Now, I've shared a few times in either sermons or in our previous podcast, pastors chats, that I love autobiographies and I love biographies.
Great books, aren't they?
And I've read a few already this year, and these are the 2 that really stood out to me the most this year. And I just sort of highlight them both because they're kind of similar in a way.
Johnny Cash.
One on Johnny Cash, The Redemption of an American
Have
Icon.
you seen Walk the Line, the movie?
Yeah, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
And this one, Cliff Richard, The Dreamer.
Was he in the Rolling Stones?
No.
So I know who he is.
Inspired them,
What
though.
movie was he in? I mean, not movie. What band is he in?
Himself.
Oh, it's just Cliff
Or
Richard.
Cliff and the Shadows.
Okay, there you go.
But now, the reason I sort of couldn't separate them both is they're both pretty legendary singers. Very different. Cliff Richard, British, rock and roll pop star.
Yep.
Johnny Cash, American, more towards the country side of things.
About the only country music I listen to is Johnny Cash.
Oh, yeah. Both very strong Christian faith. And this is one thing with Johnny Cash. This is written by Greg Laurie. Greg Laurie's a senior pastor of a very, very large church in America, in Los Angeles, actually. I think World Harvest Church or something like that. Harvest Ministries. But really, really good author. But what he touches on is Johnny Cash's faith. Now, I've read I think that's the 4th biography I've read about Johnny Cash. And apart from his autobiography, which I've read, none of the others really touch on his faith. They'll talk about his faith, but they don't go into that he really had made a very sincere, deep faith in Christ.
The movie I saw, you wouldn't pick him.
No, the movie sort of stops right before he does get, I suppose, more serious. But him and his wife, June Carter, both shared an amazing faith. And so through that book, it goes through his conversion, it goes through his close relationship with Billy Graham, goes through the way that he wanted to get out there and promote Christ in any way that he could through his albums, through his songs, through his TV show. He even made a documentary series called In the Footsteps of Jesus that he completely funded himself. And from what it sounds like, he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars on it, but he felt it was the thing that God called him to do. Again, so that was very interesting. But Cliff Richard was, he kind of almost around the same time as Elvis. Some people called him the British Elvis for a while, where he was that pop star.
Got a bit of Beatles look to him there.
Look, he's quite close with all those guys. He started in the late 50s, and he's still going today. He turned 80 last year.
Blows me away now, actually, how many artists are still touring and stuff when you're
Well, the one thing interesting about Cliff Richard, he's the only singer, musician, or whatever to have had a #1 hit in 6 consecutive decades.
It's a good effort.
From the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. He had a #1 top chart topper in all those things. And I think he's only the second beneath the Beatles for overall gold records.
There was someone you could see in concert. It doesn't matter if they're dead or alive, and that you never got to see. Who would you go see?
Well, I'd probably have to say the Beatles.
The Beatles. Oh, you never saw the Beatles?
No, I'm not that old.
Genres, I don't know.
Not that old.
I don't know when they stopped touring.
But
They're all still
Cliff's
alive,
a bit of
aren't
he's pretty schmaltzy.
Yep.
But he's a bit of a guilty pleasure
Sounds
to
like
me.
they're great.
But again, very strong Christian. Started off as that pop star. Started to realise that cliched story a little bit where, that all the riches, all the fame was before him, but he just come up empty. And it was then through the witness of another friend where he came to know Jesus and again, really sold himself out to Christ. Where a lot of people would start to say that you're committing sort of like artistic suicide by wanting to promote Jesus. And again, he had a close relationship with Billy Graham. He started getting involved in the youth movement that Billy Graham Evangelistic Society were doing, and he shared his testimony. He'd perform at all these different crusades, and but
there you go.
Just two very interesting biographies about fairly legendary singers. America, Britain, kind of thing, but really bringing out their faith in Jesus. So it's a pretty good. I know a lot of people in the church love both Cliff and Johnny. So
there you go.
Check those ones out.
That's great. Well, mine's not an autobiography. I've sort of stuck with a similar genre here, I guess. Like they're all written by pastors, I just noticed as I was looking there. So a pastor I got into probably last year was, I was watching a few different churches, and this guy I got into is Levi Lusko. Have you heard of him?
Right.
No, he's great. Fresh Life Church is his name, and it's in, I can't remember where it is. Somewhere in Central America, somewhere around there. Maybe Oklahoma. Can't remember though, so don't even hold me on that. But he's got a book called Swipe Right, and it's his relationship book. Now it's called Swipe Right because there's a popular dating app, and you just swipe left or right depending on if you like the person. Yeah, it's that one. Don't recommend people get it. It's more of a hookup app than a dating app, but he sort of did that to add a bit of blasé and how
Pop
you should swipe. And I heard it was good. And last year when we did the relationship series, that's when I started reading this one actually. And I've read it twice since because it's really good, and particularly just for working with young people. I think it's really good for youth, but anyone at any stage of their relationship. But it's just got really practical stuff in there. It's got really good marriage stuff, but it's particularly, I think, for younger people, I'd say. I'd recommend anyone below 35 particularly. It's going to be a blessing. If you're in a marriage and relationships, it's going to be a blessing for whatever stage you're in. But he particularly wrote this book. It doesn't give away the plot, but so he has this fascinating story that his wife wrote another book, but they lost their daughter when she was 4 years old. And it was just before Christmas Eve. And he went on to preach that Christmas Eve actually, as he felt like he had a strong message. But
I don't think I could do that.
No, and he's got 3 other daughters, I think. It's a really powerful part of the book actually. And I listened to this, so he was telling the story because it was on the audio book. But as he went through, he talked about this book was actually dedicated as all the stuff he wanted to talk about relationships and pass on to this daughter. I think her name was Lena, and it was just a fascinating read. And when he gets to that last bit, but just the power that you get from it of a father's heart to his daughter, and a father wanting his kid to make decisions in relationships, because we make lots of decisions in our life, but the ones you make in relationships can have huge impact in your life. And it's just a really good practical read, and it just makes a bit more sense with that. A lot of people Christians, no sex until marriage and all this, and people just think it's a little rule you avoid, but he really breaks down why that's important and breaks through the gospel and how the gospel links in. It's just a great book. It's one of the better ones I've read.
So a really good one for, as I say, for the younger.
If anyone at youth group wanted it, I'd buy it for them, I reckon.
Hear that?
So look out.
There's a challenge.
I'd pay for it. Buy it for them if they agree to read it. That's the other part. It's a two-way deal.
Maybe they pay for it. Then they give you a book report on it.
That's right. Then I'll give them the money. That's it. That's a good way to do it.
Oh, it's good.
Or you can get it for free on Audible if it's your first book. But highly
There's some good resources there.
That's it.
Touching on a lot of different topics, deep Bible stuff, discipleship stuff.
Exactly.
Biographies and so on.
Good to keep going. I've read a few good autobiographies in the last, just this year. So lots of good stuff out there. So what are your favourite books? What can we read? My pile's, it's not getting any smaller, but love adding stuff to the top of it.
I'd love to hear some recommendations of things you've picked up, something you've read recently. It doesn't have to be a brand new book. It might be a real old classic like Dietrich Bonhoeffer books and things. But we'd love to hear what you've been blessed with. And please check those out. So mostly all the books that I got here, they were all available at Koorong Books.
I think Audible. All mine were. I'm pretty sure all mine were. Audible, just Amazon for ebooks or any website.
Koorong does a lot of the ebooks as well, don't they?
It's very easy.
Otherwise, speak to us, ask us more. Where'd you get that?
That's it. So great having you. We'd love to hear your books. Comment them below and let us know how you found them. Thanks for joining us for another Pastors Chat.
Absolutely. See you again soon.